So from around 1 to 2, from around 1 to 2, like that. So instead of 1 to 2, right? 1 to 2, right? 1 to 10, count from 1 to 10, like that, okay? So them is like this, right? Them. So when you pronounce it fully. So when it's not stressed, when it occurs in a sentence, you just pronounce them like them, okay? So that's why 1, 2 becomes wanna, right? Because of the chua, right? So chua is an unstressed. Chua occurs in an unstressed syllable, like that, okay? So all other words are not stressed when they appear in a sentence, okay? Like pronouns, prepositions, on becomes un, like that. At, into, inter, right? Articles not stressed, conjunctions not stressed, auxiliary verbs not stressed. So that's what we call a sentence stress, okay? So typically when you pronounce words in a sentence, let's see. If you have, let's say this is content, this is function and function. So function words are words that don't receive stress, right? They only have functions like prepositions. They function to join content words together. So you will stress this, and this, right? Depending on what syllable the stress would fall on, right? Typically, the last content word will have the loudest degree, right? Because it's new information, right? But sometimes, typically the last word will have the loudest degree, okay, when it occurs in a sentence. Sometimes though, you want to stress different parts because you want to indicate contrast, you want to talk about new information in different positions rather than the last one. So for example, when you have this question, what types of foods are a good source of vitamins? So the information here is what type. The information that that person is seeking is what types, right? So you want to say legumes like this, right, are a good source of vitamins. So you want to stress that louder than the word vitamins. Because normally you would stress vitamins, right? But in this case, because the question is asking for that information, what types, so you stress here. But if the question is, are legumes a good source of vitamins? So in this case, it's a yes/no question to confirm whether it's good, is a source or not, right? Then you can say good or bad. So you stress here. But in the last one, the question is asking for a good source of what, right? So you want to stress vitamins like that. So generally speaking, the last word in the sentence, the last content word will receive stress. But there are times when you want to stress different parts of the sentence. Like this one, the first one, this one, the adjective, and this one, the last word, depending on what contrast you want to indicate. So let me adjust the sound here. So this one, for example, where's my sound? Where's that? Where's the start button? Right? Here? Here? Here?
Legumes are a good source of vitamins. Legumes are a good source of vitamins.
You hear the word legumes receives the stress there. But for this one,
legumes are a good source of vitamins.
Good source of vitamin, right? That one receives stress instead of the last being the last word. But generally speaking, the last word will receive stress. But for the last one, you hear vitamins as the loudest.
Legumes are a good source of vitamins.
like that. Okay, so this is the general pattern, but there are times when you want to stress other words to indicate contrast, which is possible, but normally speaking the last content word in a sentence will receive the loudest stress. Okay, so we talked about sentence stress and word stress, individual word stress. The last thing we'll talk about is intonation. So intonation has to do with the variation, meaning different degrees of tones, pitch ranges, high or low pitch, and loudness and rhythm. So everything. And you can think of intonation as the melody of your speech. Okay? So it will go up and down like that. Okay? So intonation makes the difference between emotional states of the speaker about the kind of information he wants to convey. Is it a question? Is it a statement? And so on. So here, what types of food are a good source of vitamin? We already saw that, right? So it asks about what type. So basically, we should stress here, like, right? Legumes are a good source of vitamin, like that. But you will hear two different patterns, though.
Legumes are a good source of vitamin.
In this case, legumes, right?
Legumes are a good source of vitamins.
Vitamins, right? So if you have this question, then you should answer with legumes being stressed, okay? Rather than vitamins being stressed, okay? And in the second one, I'd like to fly to Davenport, Iowa on TWA.
Legumes are a good source of vitamins.
No. This one.
I'd like to fly to Davenport, Iowa on TWA.
So that's a statement, right? I'd like to fly to Davenport, Iowa on TWA. But, and then B would answer, TWA, name of the airline, doesn't fly there.
I'd like to fly to Davenport, Iowa on TWA. TWA doesn't fly there.
TWA doesn't fly there, right? And then you hear two different intonation patterns, and you can notice the difference. Let me do.
They fly to Des Moines.
They fly to Des Moines, right? And
they fly to Des Moines.
They fly to Des Moines, like that, right? You hear two different patterns. you might not notice the difference, right? Okay. The B says TWA doesn't fly there, right? TWA doesn't fly there. And now she will continue. The first one.
They fly to Des Moines.
They're flying to Des Moines, right? The second one.
They fly to Des Moines.
They're flying to Des Moines. So you may not know the kind of the fine distinction between them. This one is like to indicate contrast. They're flying to Des Moines. This one is to indicate contrast that the TWA airline doesn't fly there. They fly to this place instead. Okay? But the second one is maybe a suggestion. They fly to Des Moines. So you might want to go to Des Moines first and then, go to Davenport later, something like that. So let me play the difference one more time.
They fly to Des Moines.
They fly to Des Moines and end at that, right? And then the second one.
They fly to Des Moines.
They're flying to Des Moines. So this is like suggestion. They're flying to Des Moines. So you want to fly to Des Moines and then maybe go to Davenport. Okay, like that. And then the last one here, you will notice some pause between Mary and Elena's. And Mary and Elena's here, okay, in two different versions.
I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday.
I met Mary and Elena's mother, so together, right? But the second one.
I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday.
You hear the pause. I met Mary and Elena's mother, like that. Okay, let me play one more time. So the first one, you won't hear the pause between Mary and. So she will just say it just together.
I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday.
I met Mary Ann. I met Mary and Elena's mother, like that. But the second one.
I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday.
I met Mary and Elena's mother, like that, right? So there's a pause there, and the tone is kind of rising too. I met Mary and Elena's mother, like that. But in the first one, I met Mary and Elena's mother. So same tone, okay? Same intonation. That's the second one. Let me play the first one more time.
I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday.
Same intonation pattern. I met Mary and Elena's mother, right? Mary Ann. So the Y here links Ann, right? I met Mary and Elena's mother. But in the second one, she stops at the end of the word Mary and then continues.
I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday.
I met Mary, rising, and then continue. I met Mary and Elena's mother, right? So there is a stop here and the tone is rising there, okay? So we'll study tone here. Intonation. So patterns of intonation in English, the first one is rising and falling. So rising first and then falling later on, okay? So this pattern signals speakers' confirmation or certainty, finality, or purposefulness as appearing in statements, commands, WH question, or extra information. For example, a positive, non-restrictive adjective clauses, and so on. A positive are things like, noun phrases that you add after a noun, like Krista, a professor at Hanyang, like that, is handsome. Okay? So here, so we call this a positive, okay? Like that. Things that you add to, extend the meaning of the first noun phrase. So this is the rising and falling, meaning that the intonation will rise first and fall immediately, okay? As in statements, command, WH question, okay? WH question, and adjective clause. So here, you can see that the intonation has to do with sentence stress also. So in here, the words that will receive stress are flaws because it's a verb, remember? This one is an ox, so it doesn't receive stress. You is a pronoun, no stress. Your, no stress. Teeth, stress, right? Because it's a noun. Regularly is an adverb, so it receives stress. So this one, you see the rising intonation here and then falling afterwards, right? Rising at the syllable that it should receive stress and then falling. And then it is because it's a content word as well, okay? So you should floss your teeth regularly, like that, regularly, and then rise and fall regularly, like that, okay? Because it's a statement, okay? You don't say you should floss your teeth regularly. You don't say that, right? That would be rising, just rising. But this has to be rising and falling regularly, like that, okay? Or floss your teeth, so this is one group, floss your teeth, right? And then every time you brush, so the intonation will rise here and then fall. And will rise here and fall, depending on each group of words, okay? Let me turn this off. So going back to this example here. I met Mary and Elena's mother at the mall yesterday. You can divide Mary and here and have that as one group of intonation, okay? I met Mary, rising and not falling because you have something else to say. So if you just have rising, it means it doesn't end. Rising, and then you continue. And Elena's mother at the mall yesterday. For here, you can end with a falling tone. So when you have a falling tone, falling intonation, it means you signal the end of it, okay? The end of it, no more question, certainty, finish, like that, command statement. But if you have rising, the rising tone, it means you have something else to say. It's not the end, it's not finish, okay? So common sense will tell you statements, command, and WH question will have the rising and falling because there's the end of it. If it's statement, end. Commands, end. WH question, end, like that. Okay? WH questions, information questions are WH questions. How can I prevent cavities, like that? Cavities, and then end. It's not cavities, right? So how can I prevent cavities? So words that receive stress are how, prevent, and cavities, right? Cavities, and end, with the falling tone. What type of toothbrush is best, like that? Not is best, right? Not rising like that, but end, okay? Rising and falling. Or extra information. You can separate a sentence into different groups depending on how long or how short and how complete they are. Here is a noun, so it receives stress. Samuel's, my dentist, and then fall, right? Says I need to floss more regularly, like that, right? Same thing here, okay? So with things that are complete, okay? The second intonation pattern is the rising. Again, rising suggests lack of finality, not finished, right? When your sentence is not finished, like series, conjoined sentences, restrictive relative clauses, yes, no questions, right? And also it can suggest speaker uncertainty, text question about something that you don't have the answer to. For example here, eat food that has plenty of nutrients, but eat food that is low in cholesterol. Cholesterol, here rising, low in fat, and then not falling yet, and then and has plenty of nutrients, and then fall. Okay? Because you have the rising tones here because they are not finished, okay? There's something that's going on, okay? Same thing here. You have the rising tone here because it's not finished, right? This is the kind of the second part of the sentence, right? Despite my doctor's advice, and then I haven't been exercising, like that, okay? Although shrimps are high in cholesterol, like that, cholesterol, I still love to eat them, like that. So low. Falling tone at the end, okay? Rising tone suggests unfinished business, okay? Or restrictive relative clauses and so on, same thing. Yes, no question. Is your cholesterol level too high? Like that, too high? Right? It's not too high, like that, right? Are you overweight? Right? Do you get enough exercise? So, rising, okay? Tag question, expressing doubt. You are Dr. Jones, aren't you? Aren't you? You are not sure. But if you say, aren't you, with the falling tone, it means you are sure. And you expect the yes answer, okay? Isn't it? Isn't it? You're not sure. But isn't it? It means you're sure. So you can end the tag question with two intonation patterns. If you have the rising tone, it means you're not sure. If you have the low tone, it means you have the falling tone, it means that you are sure. Krista is handsome, isn't he? Right? Not isn't he? Isn't he? Right? You don't need to take blood, do you? Or do you? Like that. So it depends on whether you're sure or not, whether you expect a yes, a confirmation or not. Let's put it that way. If you expect a confirmation, then you have a falling tone, right? To suggest your certainty, to suggest it's finished in your opinion. Okay? For this one, it doesn't occur much. The last type, so we study rising and falling, and then rising at the end. But this type, sharp fall first and rising at the end later, it doesn't occur much, but it does occur when you want to indicate some type of contradiction to the previous sentence, to the previous utterance. So the previous utterance might be, I've heard that linguine is a good source of vitamins. Linguine is a type of noodle, type of pasta, right? Spaghetti, like that, but different type, okay? But the person would want to contradict that information, saying that linguine is not a good source of vitamins, right? So she would use the shortfall and then rising at the end. So you all hear this after I modify the speech here.
Linguine isn't a good source of vitamins.
Linguine is not a good source of vitamin. I don't know how to describe. So shortfall at the beginning, linguine, and then flat is not a good source of vitamin, right? So like rising here just to suggest contradiction that I don't think so. I don't agree with you like that. So one more time.
Linguine isn't a good source of vitamins.
Linguine is not a good source of vitamins. Like that, okay? If someone say that to you, like I've heard that linguine is a good source, right? Korean people do this all the time, especially in drama, Hanguk drama. Ande, like that, right? Aни요, like that. So we talked about these, but this is the kind of the graphic way to show you that this is like the kind of general type rising and falling statement, right? Legumes are good source of vitamins. So the last content word will receive the stress, and also will have the rising and falling intonation if it's just a statement, okay? So
Legumes are a good source of vitamins.
so this is just the broad, the generalized, the typical one, okay? This one is a question.
What are a good source of vitamins?
What are the good source of vitamins? So falling, if it's WH question, right?
Are legumes a good source of vitamins?
If it's a yes/no question, rising at the end. Are legumes a good source of vitamins? Like that.
Legumes are a good source of vitamins?
And then this is just the rising information, rising intonation, but it's not it's not a yes/no question. Sometimes we don't inverse. We don't inverse the auxiliary with the nouns, right? But we can have that kind of statement. Krista is handsome, like that. If you have the rising, it's still a statement that functions as a question, right? You are in class now, like that. You are sleepy now, like that. So it's a question. So whenever you have a rising intonation, so it could be a question because it suggests the unfinished business, right? And suggests uncertainty, like that. Okay? I'll turn this off. So now we are done with the phonetics chapter, okay? So we talked about consonants and vowels, and also intonation patterns, right? And we looked at also stress, word stress, or sentence stress, okay? And last time I gave you the homework, which I didn't really explain in detail. Let me figure out where it is. Does anyone need a copy of the homework that I passed out last time? 2? Just one? So if I could explain the homework a bit, you have 1 week from today to work on it. And there are maybe 3 or 4 parts on the homework. The first part is very straightforward. I ask you to circle words with different features. So words which begin with a bilabial consonant. So anything that is a bilabial consonant. So B, P, W, like that. So you don't pay attention to spelling, right? You pay attention to the pronunciation. Like the word here, psyche, which means your mind, like that, right? You think, oh, there's a P, so it has to be bilabial. No, because we don't pronounce it as psyche, right? We pronounce it just psyche, psyche. So the S is the first sound, right? So it doesn't begin with, it doesn't begin with a bilabial, but it begins with the S instead. Okay, so pay attention to the pronunciation and not the spelling. Same thing with other questions. Words that begin with a dental consonant. Dental meaning interdental consonant, like that. Okay, so yeah, this should be straightforward. So that's the first part. And the second part asks you to identify a mistake or an error in the transcription. So that there must be at least one error in the transcription. So can you circle that error and then maybe correct it, right? Like number 4, these, right? You see a theta, right? You see a theta there, but in fact it should be the voice version, right? It should be the cross D, these, like that, okay? And if you're not sure, try to pronounce what you see. Try to pronounce what you see, and you might be able to see where the error is. Like, which one is a good one? Maybe 2.15. You might think, oh, is there any error in there? Everything looks perfect, right? But if you pronounce it appreciate, is it correct? We have to pronounce it appreciate, right? Appreciate, not appreciate, right? So which symbol here indicates an error? So or in 210, if you pronounce it Raman, where's the error, right? In fact, we should pronounce it remain, right? So like that, okay? So that's that part. Number 3, part 3, transcribe the following words using the IPA symbols. So I have all these words, so you have to know how to pronounce them, right? Remember, double letters are just one sound, right? Double letters are just one sound. Or number 10, queen. We never use a Q in our IPA system, right? So queen, when we pronounce queen, quintessential meaning like good example. Queen is always K-W, right? Q is always K-W, right? K and W. Just like the word queen is always K-W, queen, like that, right? So Q is never used, okay? And another thing, be careful when you see an S. S is not an S sometimes. It's not pronounced as an S because in museum, we pronounce it with a Z, museum, like that. So it's not museum, but museum, like that. So don't be fooled by the pronunciation, okay? X is another good one. We never use an X, right? X is sometimes a Z or KS or GZ. So in this one, example, when we pronounce it like example, right? Example. In the first example, in the second example. So it's example, like that. X is actually GZ in this case, example, right? Example. But in the word like extra, when we pronounce it extra, extra, extra. So it's like X, like that, right? X, extra, like that. So in this case, it's KS. So X could be GZ or KS, right? Example, exhausted, words like exhausted, exhaust, pikolhada, right? So it's exhaust, right? Exhaust is GZ, exhaust, like that. What else? X, or sometimes just a Z, as in xylophone. I don't know. Silo, this is Xi, so just a Z. So X is pronounced in various ways, GZ, KS, or even Z. So depending on what you have. So what matters is the pronunciation rather than the spelling. And what I would suggest, if you don't know, what if you don't know how the word is pronounced, right? You might say that. A good source is dictionary.com. The reason why I suggest this site is that the system that they use is more or less similar to what we're using. So you shouldn't have a lot of difficulty decoding the symbol. Let's see, let's look at exhaust. Oops. Exhaust. You have this option here. Spell meaning for people who don't know the IPA symbol, they will have one system. So this is not the system that we use. So if you click on that, then you will have the IPA sort of version. So exhaust like that, okay? You'll see that. So just like what we did here, okay? But there might be some symbols that are not what we use, so you have to be careful. Maybe let me check how they transcribe the word like man. They use the same thing. So if it's the IPA, it's kind of the same thing, man. Okay? So what about maybe exit? I think that they will do the same way. AKSIT. So here. So there may be two pronunciations for the same though. Exit, which is the way I pronounce, and then I don't know, exit. Some people might pronounce it like that way. So if you're not sure, because there are sometimes that some cases where you are not sure about the pronunciation, so you can check this site. The reason why I mentioned this site is the system that they use is closest to what we are using in our class. It's just like that. Okay? And it's a good way to learn how to pronounce words too, this kind of exercise. Okay? So, the fourth part is perhaps the easiest part. Write the name for the following organs that we study. Okay? There's one thing that before we start out the new chapter, I want to tell you. You might ask me, how do we know when it's the cross D or is the theta, right? Because both of them represent the TH sound. One is, this is the voice version, this is the voiceless version. So there are no rules, but there are some observations. For the voiceless, they are usually, I'm saying usually, not rules, okay? In adjective and in nouns, okay? In other words, they are content words, okay? Not rules, okay? Not every case, because I can imagine some of you might say, Krista, you told me the wrong thing. No. So for example, the word thin. This is an adjective, okay? And it's a content word, so likely it will have the TH, thin, like that, okay? Or words like bath, B-A-T-H, bath. Take a bath. So it's bath, like that. Okay? If it's a noun, an adjective. Okay? So it will have the, if it's a noun, it should have the voiceless version, the theta. But if it's a cross D version, you should have either a verb that corresponds to that noun. So the verb of bath is bathe, right? So bathe, B-A-T-H-E. So in this case, it's a cross D type. So bathe, right? Sunbathe, like that. The word tooth is a noun, so it's tooth, like the theta type, but there's a verb version of it, which means the tooth coming out, T-O-O-T-H-E. So that case, you will have the cross D, like that, if they come in pairs. And then also for the cross D, you have like function words, like pronouns. You know the word thy? Like if you read Shakespeare works or like the Bible even, old language, thy is like your. So thy, thee, so they will have the cross D, meaning you and your and thou, like that, okay? And also, let me think. Also adverbs, like the word there, then, these, like that, this. All these little words that are more functional than contentful, they don't really have, meaning, right? How do you explain the word there? Yogi, right? Shogi, like that. They don't have real meaning like these, right? So they are more content words rather than function words, and they have the cross D, the voice type, rather than the voiceless. So these are only observations, okay? Not rule, okay? And things that occur in between the words, like the word worthy. It's kind of in the middle, not front, not back, in the middle. If it's in the middle and it's like a sandwich, sandwich, it's sandwiched by two voice sounds, then it's likely that it's gonna be the cross D version. So this is worthy. So worthy, like that, worthy, okay? So if it's in the middle and it's sandwiched, meaning it's flanked by one voice and another voice, then it's likely that it's gonna be voice too. I'm saying likely, not everyone. So you have some observations here. If you have adjectives and nouns, then you likely are gonna have the voiceless. But if you have like all the function words here and the verb versions and also the sandwich version of things, then you're gonna have the cross D, okay? So that's my observations that I can give you. So we can start the next chapter, which I know we'll never finish today, but we'll have to start anyway. This is chapter 4, and it's related to chapter 3. We are still talking about sounds, but we move on to phonology. So we first study phonetics, and now we move on to phonology, okay? Remember when you have the logi word, the stress fall on the syllable before that suffix, okay? So phonology, but phonetics, right? Is the study of how speech sounds pattern together or contrast. Meaning you study, in phonetics, you study each sound, okay? Vowel, consonant, stress, intonation. But now you study how those sounds can be or cannot be grouped together, or how a sound may contrast with other sounds, okay? So we'll ask questions such as, how do speech sound pattern in a particular language How are they organized? How can you organize sounds in our language, and how do they function? Okay? But when you study phonetics, you study different things, right? What are the possible human sounds, and what are the properties of those sounds? What organs do we use? So you study each sound, okay? But in phonology, you do the patterning. So like this. So if I ask you, which of the following can be an English word? This one, haped, talanaz, ngala, plask, or thrask. Which of the following could be an English word? You would say which one? Plask, right? Plask is easy because we have words like frask and so on. And thrask is also a possible English word. But haped, no, because it's weird to have H before P in English. Or talanas, right? Because L is not followed, is not usually, T is not usually followed by an L. And ngala, while it's possible, it never occurs in English. You never have the N with a tail in the front position in English. In other languages, yes. In other languages, yes, but not in English, okay? So this is a kind of thing that we'll study in phonology. How do sounds pattern together, okay? Or another question is, we study contrast between sounds, right? Like when they are arranged, pat, sound in pat, is it different from the P in spat? Spat, pat, pat, spat. There are some differences. So when they are patterned after S or before and also without the S, there are some differences. So this is what phonology studies, okay? The key idea, the first key idea is the idea of contrast, which is important. So we say that individual sounds can function to indicate contrastiveness versus non-contrastiveness in meaning. In other words, one sound can make meaning different. One sound can make meaning different. So when you make meaning different, then we say there's contrastiveness, okay? So two sounds are contrastive if interchanging the two can change the meaning of the word, okay? Two sounds are contrastive if you switch the two and you have a new meaning, in other words. Like in Korean, there is this P with, superscript H, superscript. Superscript is to write above, okay? So the superscript H, superscript, is a symbol that superscript. Script is to write, super is above, to write above. So there's the superscript H here on the P. And there's the version without the superscript H. But they sound completely different. And maybe I'm not gonna venture into pronouncing them because I cannot. Because in English, there's no such distinction. Pull, pull, pull. No, not quite, right? Because I cannot do it. Pull, pull, right? Closer. Yeah. So anyway, you can see that this is in the spelling. You might see that this is a, I don't know, p-up, b-up, right? You see in the spelling, but in terms of pronunciation, they both are the P sound. But one P has this H, the other one has no H. And we'll call that aspiration. And I will talk about aspiration in a minute, okay? So we can say that in Korean, this P is different from that P. Because when you change from one P to another P, you have two different words, two different meanings. So this P is different from that P. It's contrastive, meaning it makes meaning different, okay? Let's see, where, there's this problem with my pronunciation of Korean. And I just learned this word recently. Podong. Difficult. I cannot distinguish. Podong, potong. Podong, podong. I have to really concentrate in order to pronounce them correctly. Podong, botong, right? But you can see that they are contrastive in both positions, right? But this kind of thing never happens in English. So whenever I want to say these two words, I have to really concentrate on the pronunciation. But I cannot never do it naturally, right? So in Korean, for Korean at least, our IPA system can never just write as P or just a P. But since there's some difference between the grass word and also the fire word, then we need some more symbol. And in this case, we'll use the H symbol to represent the P in the word grass. And we call that aspiration. A-S-P-I-R-A-T-I-O-N. Aspiration. Aspirate. Aspiration. So the H refers to the aspiration or the air, the puff of air that comes out when you pronounce a word, right? Podong, podong, like that. Podong. But botong, no. Botong, no. Bo, the word bo. Botong, no, right? But podong, yes. So that's how I do. So the H here is the aspiration that comes out when you pronounce that, right? So bulgogi, no air. But that word, the grass word, has the air. So we indicate the H, okay? So we add the diacritic meaning the symbol, to the symbol P, okay? So we come back to English. So in English, you can do the same thing. M and N, they are two different sounds because when you substitute one sound for another sound, the meaning changes. Some and sun, everything is the same except for the M and the N. So by replacing the M with an N, you get a different meaning, a different word. So in this case, we say that M and N are two important sounds in English, okay? That are contrastive and that can indicate meaning change, meaning different. So in Korean, the P with the H and the P without the H, they are both very important, at least for me and for you, right? K and G, the K and G, when you exchange them, the meaning is different. S and Shu, meaning is different. And you can do it with vowels too. So that's the idea that we want to study in phonology, okay? And the whole sound could contrast and parts of sounds could also contrast. Till and dil, the only contrastive thing that makes meaning different is the voice and voiceless, okay? For the place, M and N with a tail, right? This is velar, this is bilabial. Manner as well, this is the alveolar, and this is the alveolar, this is alveolo-palatal, like that, right? So parts of a sound could contrast as well. So sounds in a minimal pair, meaning two words that are different minimally, okay? There's only one difference between the two words. They are contrastive, they are unpredictable. They are unpredictable. They must be learned, okay? You cannot tell where N will occur. You cannot tell where M will occur. You cannot tell where the P-up or B-up will occur because they can occur everywhere, okay? They belong to different, what we call phonemes. This is a new word for you. So a phoneme is a sound that can make meaning different. an important sound that can make meaning different. So a phoneme is a significant unit of sound. Significant meaning important, right? That can indicate contrast in meaning within a particular language. So in English, the difference between p-up and b-up is not a phoneme because we never indicate the contrast using that. Okay? Now, this is where the confusion will come in. The phoneme, again, is a minimal unit of sound that serves to distinguish meaning between words, right? Phoneme is significant unit of sound, meaning that it could indicate contrast in meaning. A phoneme can be composed of a set of sounds which we call allophones that are considered by native speakers to be the same sound. Okay? An allophone is the different phonetic realization of a phoneme, realization meaning to actually pronounce it. Okay? Now let me show. That's kind of abstract, right? So we know that in English there's a phoneme T for sure because T is contrastive with D dog, right? You can do that, tin and din, two different words, right? There's meaning in contrast. Now, the word, the phoneme T, we have the phoneme T, could consist of many ways of pronouncing that T. If you pronounce it in the word top, you would have the H, you would have the aspiration. So when you pronounce the word top, like normally, top, top, top. You see, there's aspiration. Top, 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 like that. In normal pronunciation, we can pronounce it with the aspiration, with the H, okay? But after an S, you would pronounce the T, same T, but different way, a little bit different. Stop, stop, stop. There's no movement of the paper. No matter how forcefully you do it. Stop, stop, stop. No, right? But top, top, top. Yes, right? So this T, still T, still T. I consider it as a T. We pronounce it with the tongue tip at the alveolar ridge. It's voiceless, it's stop, same. But one has more air than the other. So minor difference, but still T. But this one, this T is kind of in between, right? In between. When American people, a lot of American people pronounce this, it's rider, rider, rider. Almost look like a D even, almost sounds like a D even, rider, rider. Just like as if you pronounce it with a D. I'm not saying that that's the only way to pronounce it. I'm saying that a lot of people would pronounce it rider, rider, water, water, like that. But British people might say it like water, water, like that. So in this case, it's a different T, but still a T. A T that sounds like a D. Rider, letter, L-E-T-T-E-R, letter. Can you write me a letter? Pyonji, right? Letter, like that. This T in mountain is a different T. One way of pronouncing it is a different T. Some people might pronounce it like mountain, 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 right? Go to the top mountain, like that. So it's a T, but a different way of pronouncing the T. So we have to indicate the minor differences by making up some symbols, right? So this one with the air, we have the H, we know that. This one without the air, so we just have the regular T. This one that looks like a D, we have this, the little V below it. And this one that looks like, that sounds like that. It's a glottal sound. We indicate it with a question mark, okay? So, bottle, bottle, like that. So, they are all T, okay? Pronounced with voice, with no voicing, no vocal cords vibrating, with the alveolar ridge position, and they are all stopped. But the way the actual way we pronounce them are different. right? The actual ways of pronouncing them are different depending on which position they are in. So we call these realization, this actual realization, the real pronunciation, we call them allophones. And we call the abstract thing, we call it just the T, the phoneme T, okay? So the phoneme T has different allophones in English. T with the air, T without the air, T that sounds like a D, writer, letter, like that. Or T that sounds like that. Mountain, bottle, like that. That's the glottal T. So again, we come back to the concept of phoneme and allophone. The phoneme is a unit of sound that is significant because it can indicate meaning different, right? But it can consist of a set of sounds, right? And that set of sounds is actually what we call allophones, okay? Allophones are real sound that you pronounce, but the phoneme is what you have in your head, what you perceive, okay? So everybody would perceive all these as the T. Everybody that speaks English, okay, will perceive all these T's as T, abstract T. But the way that they actually pronounce them are a little bit different in each context. Top, stop, writer, mountain, like that, okay? So we know allophones and phonemes. And this is to show you the T with the H. This is the sound wave. You can see that the T with the H, it is aspiration. You see that before the vowel A, this is tie, right? Tie with the aspiration. So you do tie like that. The vowel A starts here, but the T is here. So there is this kind of blank period. And that's the period of aspiration. Aspiration is the air that comes off the mouth. But when you do the stop, the sty or the stop, without the aspiration, there is no aspiration here. So you can see that the vowel can just start right after the T. So the aspiration here means that the vowel will just start later on, okay? Because you have to wait until the puff of air is gone. Tie, like that. But when you do sty, the vowel can start right after the T. And when you do the D, the vowel can start again after the D. But in this case, you see like little of the vocal cord vibration like that, because this D is a voice sound, okay? It's 2:10. So before we go on, this is important. What is a phoneme and what might be a group of allophones will be different in different languages. In Korean, you have at least 2 T's, right? The aspirated one, if we come back to Korean, the aspirated one and the non-aspirated one, right? P or T, same thing, okay? Let's see if I can use this. So in Korean, you have, I am not gonna venture to pronounce it, this and this, right? Two T, T good, T whatever. No. I cannot. And then even with this, right, the double, the sang T good, right? Do you have this? Double? No? Why? It's asymmetrical. It's not balanced. So this is the aspirated one, this is the non-aspirated one, and I don't know what to call that. So in Korean, this is one phoneme. This is one phoneme. This is one phoneme. So this is the T without the aspiration. This is the T with the aspiration. I don't know what to call that. Like that. But in English, the TH and the T, they are different allophones, right? So in Korean, different phonemes, but in English, they are same phoneme, but different allophones. And how do we indicate that? We indicate the allophone using square brackets, okay? When we want to indicate an allophone, we use a pair of square brackets. But when we want to indicate phonemes, we use just the slanting line, okay? In other words, in Korean, in English, we have the phoneme T. We have the phoneme T in this type of setting. But they could be pronounced with the aspiration, so in square brackets, or they could be pronounced without the aspiration, or sometimes they sound like a D, like this T, like that, right? That's English, T. But in Korean, you have the non-aspirated T and the aspirated T as two different phonemes. In English, you just have one. In Korean, you have two, at least. Okay? I don't know how to represent the Sangti-gut in Korean system. And how do we know why it's a phoneme, why it's an allophone? We use the idea of contrastive. In Korean, if you mispronounce, in other words, if you mispronounce a word with a T and you pronounce it with a T with an H, the meaning is completely different. Podong, podong, like that, right? Podong, botong, whatever. But in English, doesn't matter if you mispronounce them, it's the same word, okay? Doesn't matter, it's the same word. So if there's no meaning different, then it's gonna be the same word. If I pronounce the word writer with the aspiration, writer, same word. Nobody will misunderstand me. If I pronounce it with the H here, with the question mark, writer, like that, it's still the same word. If I pronounce here stop with the aspiration, stop, it will be the same word. But people might say, oh, he just doesn't pronounce it in a standard way. Stop, like that, right? Some people do that. But still, same word, no misunderstanding, no contrastive in meaning. But in Korean, if you mispronounce them, if you just replace one with another, then the meaning is totally different. So it's a phoneme. So phoneme can indicate meaning difference, but an allophone cannot, because allophone is just the different way in pronunciation that doesn't result in meaning changes. Okay?